right now, and we are live. Hey there, friendlies. How's up? Welcome to the latest episode of my Unnamed Outdoor Panel Series, the monthly series where I get to talk to people I respect about things that kind of excite me. Tonight, what we've got is Kevin Callan, who is also known to many people as the Happy Camper. I hope I didn't blow your last name there, Kevin. He's the author of 18 books, including the latest is was it Once Around Algonquin, which is your self-published book, if I remember correctly, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a contributor to a lot of magazines, including Explore, I think. I've heard you on the CBC before. Radio, I've seen you on TV. So a lot of people watching this probably have seen you in the same places. And what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, well, that's the most important thing. I'm having this tonight.
Is that a Talisker?
Yeah.
It's a choice. It's a very nice choice. Good on you.
Martin, come on.
Martin?
Show what you have.
Okay, we'll do Martin next. All right, Martin Pine. He's a skilled camper and bushcrafter. He does a lot of canoeing. You've got a big focus on crown land camping. Martin's got a channel with, what are you at, 8,500 subs at this point?
It sounds about right. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
My channel's not monetized, so I don't really keep track of numbers. But yeah, that sounds about right.
I was not muted. So, Martin, I missed it. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Glenmorangie Speyside Single Malt Scotch Whiskey Elgin Classic with a pork cask finish. This is a gift from Mr. Callan himself.
I remember that video.
Video. So thank you, Callan.
And
cheers to you.
So the last member of the panel is Mr. Mike Morton. You guys have been watching Joe Robinette for a long time and definitely recognize Mike from some of his videos. Mike, unlike the rest of us, really puts his energy into Instagram. He's got a great Instagram feed. I suggest that anyone who is on the Instagrams follow him. I've got links to all these guys' stuff in the show notes below. So what are you drinking tonight, Mr. Mike?
Well, no scotch, not yet, I guess, but I have a Collective Arts, you can't really see it. It's a bourbon barrel-aged imperial porter. It's about 11.5% or so.
Wow.
Should be pretty good.
Well,
it did come in one of these though, so
nice, and it's a bourbon cask, so it's whiskey related, and it's porter, so it's great. And to bring up the rear, I'm drinking A Day at the Beach by the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. It's a single malt, and it's got kind of a spicy seaside flavor to it. Now,
Never seen that before in my life.
that's because you have to be a member of the society. And whenever they put out a bunch of bottles, they only do it once. So this is bottle 1 of 224. I will not tell you how much this bottle cost me. And I'm going to be really sad when it's gone. So to get back on track, what we're doing here tonight is talking about winter camping. All three of these guys know a lot about it. They all do a lot of it. They're all much better equipped than I am. And I think what we're going to do is start off with the pre-camping stuff, like packing, getting ready. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have like fitness regimes that you get into in order to, get out there and not kill yourself in the deep snow? After that, we'll do some best practices and so on when you're actually out in the hot tent or the cold tent, depending. And then after that, we'll sort of finish up with, what do you do once you've packed everything up, get it home? There's a picture, I think, Kevin, you had it on Facebook, of you drawing out your hot tent in your living room. And that's what makes me want to talk about the post-camp, the post-mortem stuff, because that was really funny. And then after that, that should take us about an hour. And then we'll open up the chat a bit for people who want to come on. If you want to come on because you've got a winter camping story to tell, or you want to ask one of these gents a question or two, just sort of say so in the chat on the side, and we'll see about getting you a link. We don't have room for many people this time, so we're going to curate it a little bit. There'll be one or two at a time. So I think I've done a fantastic job of introducing you guys. So let's start with when you guys are setting up. You've decided you're going to go camping at a certain time. Do you guys like to go when it's really cold, not so cold? How do you prepare? Who wants to start?
Well, I have some thoughts right out of the gate on that, actually.
I want to hear them.
Okay, well, with respect to preparation, it depends entirely on the kind of camping that I'm going to do. If I'm going to go hot tenting, obviously, that's going to be a completely different kind of outfit that I'm going to be bringing than if I'm going to be going and doing the other style of winter camping that I enjoy, which is snow shelter camping. I don't do cold tenting. I find cold tenting to be the least comfortable, most arduous kind of camping. And I'm kind of a slim guy, don't have a lot of body fat, hard for me to keep warm. Honestly, I find cold tenting to be really, really trying. So snow shelters are really surprisingly warm, and hot tenting, of course, is pure luxury. So it depends on what style of camping I'm going to be doing. So if I'm going to be hot tenting, then I've got a sled. It's a pulk, loaded up with these big tanks, these giant duffel bags. I can show you. Actually, I'm leaving on a trip tomorrow, my wife and I. If you look over there on the floor, those two orange things on the floor, those are our two pulks. And so that's the gear that we would bring for two people. We each carry one sled that we haul in on snowshoes with ropes, with tow ropes. If I am going to be going into the bush and I'm going to be building a snow shelter, I need a shovel and another small piece of equipment to build a snow shelter. I don't need a hot tent and a stove and all that. I'm likely not even going to make a big fire or anything like that, so I might not even bring an axe, maybe a small hatchet, because I won't be making fires. And I'll be bringing a tiny, tiny little kid's sled towed behind me on poles so that it doesn't catch up to me on downslopes. It's so light, I don't have to worry about the weight of it pushing me from behind and stuff like that. So with respect to preparation, it depends entirely on the kind of style of tenting I'm going to be doing. And with respect to temperatures, the kinds of temperatures we're experiencing right now, where the temperatures are hovering just around zero, just a bit below freezing, I don't love that. I find that the snow tends to get very wet. The air is very, very damp and cold and clammy. It gets into your clothes, it gets into your gear. It's harder to stay warm, I find. I lose more heat that way and fight harder to stay warm. Whereas in -10 to -15 is a drier cold, and snow just sort of falls off you. You don't wet out your gear and your clothing and stuff like that. And I find that much more comfortable, a drier style camping.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't really love it in the woods when it's hovering around zero. I don't love it in the woods when it's hovering around -30 either, but around -10 to maybe 22. That's probably my favorite winter temperatures. Now, these pulks, they're kind of like the modern take on the toboggan, right? That, First Nations used to pull their stuff on a wooden toboggan before we started sliding down hillsides with them.
Freight toboggans can be quite expensive. And so what I've got is just basically a big kid's sled. You could tow 3 kids comfortably on that. It's about...
Okay, so that wasn't like a dedicated pulk.
No, it's not. No, it's got some ropes and it's hardware attached to it for pulling and stuff like that. It's not. It doesn't. It has some advantages over a freight toboggan, but a freight toboggan, especially the modern ones that are made out of high density polyethylene, they conform to the terrain. They're kind of bendy, like a crazy carpet almost. Yeah. So they tend to be a little bit less tippy. They don't ride as high, whereas the one, a sled is a stiff thing, like a traditional toboggan. So it kind of teeter-totters over logs and things like that. It doesn't track as well as a freight toboggan would. But these were cheap. So.
Okay. So Kevin, what do you do when you're prepping for a trip into the woods?
Oh, I'm doing the same thing. I head out next week for a good solid week with my buddies on a trip, and we have a mix. One person has a makeshift pulk, and my old pulk that I got from my daughter's Christmas sled, And yeah, it works. It's cheap, but we
You gonna
did.
show that on camera?
Yeah, it's actually frozen outside. But the thing about that is, it's cheap and it's effective. It's not as like it's voluminous, but it's not. You can't put as much gear in it. But the key for those is not just pull it on a rope. You need to put that rope through a PCV pipe, and then link it on to either use a hip harness from an old pack, or I find it better to be a full harness for your shoulders, because you want to pull it on your shoulders, not your hip. And then what you do from there is do knots instead of metal. So metal is not good when it's cold, right? And we want cold. I agree with everybody here. We want cold. -10 is good. -20 is fantastic. It's a dry cold, and we're talking Celsius here. It's a dry cold where it's not a damp cold. We don't want to be wet. We don't want to be damp, because that is miserable. We want it to dry cold. So we want it to clip on, and then. But the key thing is when those poles, when you're hauling it, do not put them parallel, crisscross like this, because if they're parallel and you're pulling that pulk up, well, it's good when you're going down the hill. The poles, meaning that the pulk is not going to hit you and then flip you over, right? Yeah. But when you're turning around the corner, if they're parallel, your pulk will flip over. Crisscross, it will not flip over.
I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Yeah, but I graduated to a freight toboggan because it slides better. Just make darn sure, and I've learned this from experience. When you wake up in the morning and it snowed overnight and it's like less than -10 and it's a wet snow, scrape that toboggan, put wax on it, or it will be like pulling a thing of cement.
Oh yeah, because it'll
grip, right? It will glue right to the trail, and you will not be able to do it. And you'll think you're old, like, and you think you'll be out of shape, like, but no, it's actually the snow. It's nothing. Yeah. So the freight toboggan is fantastic. But whatever, and if you cold camp, you can actually throw everything in your backpack and not haul it all. When I travel with the First Nations people up north, the one thing I learn about them is they love the winter because they can travel more. It's easier to travel in the bush in the winter than the summer. They enjoyed it more. It's free reign, more so than in the summer. So yeah, pulling it on a toboggan was great, but don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush at all. I mean, there's mornings where we really have to get up and choose who's going to go and make a trail with their snowshoes down the trail for a couple hours while we're making breakfast and putting camp down. They come back, and then we get the toboggans and we haul that sled down that trail. Because I mean, last year we got into some slush, and the slush clung onto those toboggans. And it took us 5 hours to go 2 kilometers.
Wow.
I mean, that's not normal, but that happened. So
you lose some weight though, man.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. That sounds. And just before we get to Mike Morton, I want to say I haven't had time to say welcome to like Dennis, Avid Outdoorsy guys here, obviously Outdoor Dauber, Tyler's here, all the usual guys. It looks like, did we get rated from the Canoe Hound show?
I think
looks like it
happened.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that. Yeah, there's Avid Outdoorsy guy.
Mike, so, warned, they're crazy people.
I know.
Warn you, Mike. Mike, are you all right? I'd be nervous if I were you.
Yeah, so Mike, tell me what's your setup? Do you do the pulk thing as well?
So I actually I just saw Whiskey Jack just came in. I just got a toboggan from him a couple weeks ago.
A freight toboggan?
Yeah, I haven't used it yet. I'm going to Killarney, I think, in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
First time out this year. My son's, the last few years I haven't gone much. I got a 3-year-old, so it makes it a little bit difficult to get out. So I'm looking forward to trying that. I've used a couple before, but not in long stints. Normally I've just used like a typical Canadian Tire $50 Pelican sled, which works okay. I never got around to putting the plastic poles on it, so you got to struggle going downhill and run behind it, or hope you don't get run over. But yeah, I agree with these guys. I much prefer colder. When you get too close to zero, it just gets, I find, -2, -3, often with the humidity, it can feel a lot colder to me than -15 or 20. And again, you have to worry about the wet or getting close to zero, slush. A couple years ago, I might not have said the same thing because I always struggled. with sleeping bags. I'd be putting like a -5 and a -2 together. And
But not anymore.
yeah, last year I got a -40 Marmot sleeping bag. So at this point, it really doesn't matter. I used it last year a bunch of times. The coldest I had it was -30, and it was good to go. So it's a bit of an Olympic event getting it packed back in its stuff sack, but totally worth it.
Yeah, how big is that when it's stuffed?
It's not terrible, but yeah, it's probably it gets down pretty good. But it has like that Gore wind stopper fabric on the outside, so that prevents the wind if you're sleeping under a tarp or something. But it also prevents the air escaping from the inside when you're trying to pack it.
Yeah, my main bag is a Marmot as well. It's not a -40 though. It's the usual minus whatever like 8 degrees is Fahrenheit. You know, I find that they make good stuff generally. It's not extremely high.
That's the first thing I have of theirs from anything. Not that I've avoided it. I just.
I have 3 Marmot bags, including that -40 one, and I like all of them so far. They've all been terrific.
Yeah, that's great. And I got a bit of a gap now because I have a -1 or 2 bag, and then all the way down to -40. So
you need to fit something in there.
Yeah.
I neglected to mention another style of camping that Mike just mentioned, and that is just going out with a tarp, not any kind of shelter other than a tarp. You're not bringing any kind of tent, hot tent or cold tent. You're not making a snow shelter, which is really, really cuts out wind and stuff like that, just under a tarp. And that's quite a bit more hardcore. You really have to have your sleep system dialed in and know what you're doing for that.
Yeah.
Because if you run into some foul weather, blowing snow especially, it doesn't matter that you're under a tarp, you're going to get buried.
Especially if it changes in the middle of the night or whatever.
Yeah, you're going to get covered in snow. Yeah.
Yeah, and really the only winter camping I've ever done was in Canadian Forces tents with like the zip-in bottom and everything, right? So it's cold camping, but there's like 4 of you in these tents. Do you guys know those big? Well, granted, this was a long ass time ago, so I don't even know if they still use them.
What's the material?
It was like a big heavy canvas, if I remember correctly. You know, it smelled terrible as all Forces stuff does. After 30 years of, you know, you kind of feel like you got to take a shower when you step out of the tent in the morning. Which brings us to something else, because you guys all have tents, right? Mike, do you have a tent?
I do not have a hot tent, not yet. I've slept in them a bunch. I know Joe has one. I know a couple other guys have one. Definitely on my to-do list. I'd probably pick the tarp over regular nylon tent these days, but yeah, the hot tent's the way to go. Yeah,
because I have a friend who grew up here in rural Quebec. Actually, it's funny. There's a whole lot of Ontario on this panel. I'm like the only. Actually, no. Pine Martin's got some Quebec cred too. Well, he grew up, I think, in the North Shore.
I grew up in rural Quebec, actually, near. Does anyone know where Montebello is?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There. Actually, just on the North Shore of the Ottawa River.
Yeah. It's a nice part of the province, that's for sure. But this guy, I'm not going to name him because he's not on YouTube and, you know, privacy and all that. But he grew up, all of his friends in here, they all made sure that they got tents with a zip-in bottom, or like they sewed a canvas bottom onto it to avoid the slushiness. And I'm bringing this up because that's what I was looking at. But I was having a chat with Martin months ago now. And you were saying that all you have to do is tap down for like 45 minutes and you won't get the slushy. Am I remembering that properly?
It's not to avoid slush. It's that when you're setting up your tent in deep packed snow, you have to tamp down the snow and then let it sinter and harden up so that when you go back and pitch your tent, you're not post-holing inside your hot tent or creating big depressions in the floor, the vinyl floor of your cold tent or whatever. So it's just to have a hard floor to set your tent on. It's not to prevent slush. I mean, when the outside temperature gets hot enough, the floor is going to soften up no matter what you do. In fact, in a hot tent, it's not uncommon for people to get wet floors inside unless you take some precautions.
So what kind of precautions would you take then? Because to me, I'm going to get a tent with a floor like Adrenaline's got, right? Adrenaline Adventures. You guys know him?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. his tent has a zip-in floor, I think it is.
I think one of the things you can do, and one of the lessons I had to learn the hard way, is often when you're sleeping, what is underneath of you is more important than necessarily your sleeping bag sometimes, because the ground will just suck the cold right out of you.
Okay.
So to avoid melting it, if you have multiple, like the last time I went last winter, with one of those thermarests, foldable Z breasts or whatever, a winter rated sleeping pad, often a wool blanket as well. And that'll help not only keep you warm, but help melting out everything underneath of you.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that a bedding full of pine boughs or, well, spruce boughs or something isn't going to be enough to sort of separate you from the cold.
Yeah.
If you have enough, it will be. It's not the most comfortable, but to have enough is a lot of work.
Yeah.
What's that?
Kevin is saying, yeah.
No, it is a lot of work, unless you want all the branches into it. I mean, usually you're just putting the tips in there, right?
Yeah.
If you're putting whole branches in, then it's kind of lumpy and it's going to dig into you. Well, actually, if you have enough of an air mattress thickness, you'll be fine, I suppose. But I mean, natives have used spruce boughs and pine boughs and stuff like that for millennia, along with furs and hides, and they were just fine. So if you have enough distance between you and the snow, you'll be fine. And the nice thing about pine boughs, like if you're camping on crown land where you're allowed to cut these things, you can't do that in a park. But if you're in a place where it's permissible to do that, there's a lot of advantage. It can be very aromatic depending on the species of boughs that you're cutting, and keep the tent smelling really, really fresh. When you track in some snow that comes in on your boots or on your clothes or something like that, it falls on the boughs and it just sort of breaks up and falls in between. It doesn't pool and puddle like if you have a tarp or a blanket or something down, that'll hold and catch water. And so that's not so great. Whereas boughs just allow that to drip through and keep you high and dry up off of it. So there's some advantages to boughs, but it's work. You've got to gather them and harvest them, process them, and sort of put them in place. You don't usually throw them down. Normally you put the twiggy stem into the snow, and you kind of like shingle them along. And that ensures that you've got a nice, consistent separation between you and the snow. And you can layer it as thick as you like. But I mean, it's a lot of work to do that. I mean, the inside of a hot tent is typically bigger than most nylon tents.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed that as well.
The thing I would add to that, though, Martin, is actually spruce boughs. If you're the far north or that's all you have, that's fine. But don't ever use spruce. You'll smell like cat pee. I learned that by experience. When I traveled with the Cree up in northern Quebec, and I was using spruce, and the First Nations elder wife was giggling at me, and I did not know why. And she kept on doing this to me, and you smell. And they were using balsam. Balsam is far better to use for scent. And yes, you do weave them in like a basket. So, and you do aerate the snow. And like you guys were saying, it's like you do compress the snow, and if it's really good snow, that's fantastic. So you create a barrier below you, and then when you put the stove in and it starts melting, and you put a barrier below the stove too, and as well, so the heat goes up through the stove, so it doesn't melt crazy. But if it's good compressed snow and it's good snow, like -20, -10 snow, then there shouldn't be an issue. But in this winter we're having, I'm not sure in Quebec what you guys are having, but we're having a really stupid winter.
Yeah, we are too.
Where it's going to be a swimming pool. And I don't know what the answer for that is that's not a typical winter. What I would do is not do a floor tent. I mean, you're just asking for all the water to gather. In like Martin has said too, in provincial parks, in campgrounds, you shouldn't be cutting boughs. Obviously, that's illegal. So I bring a tarp that's that rubber material, almost like that you would use for like a waterproof backpack for. So it won't slide, because if you put a tarp down, you'll slip and fall onto the stove. It would be brutal. So put that down. But boughs really do work, and it is a lot of work. I mean, maybe. In reality of it is, if you're going solo, it's a lot of work. But if you're with a bunch of people, you delegate work. I mean, next week when I go with my buddies, I know my job. As soon as I get to camp, I know how to harvest certain woods because of my background. I know where to get the boughs from, and they got the tent set up, and then my other buddies got the stove going, and we'll put boughs down. Boughs really, and then what I do is I get a piece of reflective. A piece of material from like the reflective the pipes from Home Depot.
Reflectix.
Oh, Reflectix, yeah.
Yeah, I put that down. Cost you $2, and then
Yeah.
I put my air mat down. And air mats are better because they're more insulated, but you can pierce them pretty easily. So you got to watch that. But they are better. I put that down and then put my sleeping bag down, and really that's the best ever thing to sleep on. Like Mike is saying, use snow to your advantage. That is your advantage, really. Like snow is an insulator. It's good to sleep on as long as you compress it. And the wood stove inside, sure enough, it's going to melt, but in good conditions. So maybe don't go on your first winter trip in bad conditions. Like 2 weeks ago when it was freezing rain, it was raining. Like I just didn't go. My girlfriend Christine wanted to go camping, and I said, if I take you right now, you'll hate it. Yeah.
Yeah, that Reflectix is really good stuff, and it's essentially waterproof too, right? And it quite literally weighs nothing.
Yeah.
And you can really pack it down, put it in the bottom of your sled or whatever, and just jam everything on top. Yeah, like I said, for $25, you can get like a 10-foot roll or something.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, this is ducting insulation. You get it in the ducting and cooling area of your hardware store. It comes in big rolls. It's really cheap. It's basically bubble wrap with a kind of mylar silvery reflective coating on both sides. I use it as my sit and knee pads. I have a couple of little squares that I've been using for a decade now. The silver's all worn off on one side of it. And I've been using that as sit pads for years, and it makes really, really inexpensive pads. And as Mike says, it's waterproof, so it insulates you from any moisture from below. Jesse, you had asked, though, is there anything you can do to sort of prevent the melt from happening? Well, much depends on the temperature, but an awful lot depends on how you run your stove. I sleep cold. I always recommend, if you're hot tenting, sleep cold. You'll sleep better if you have a sleep system that lets you sleep through the night without the stove running. So when I go hot tenting, the hot tent is to keep us warm during the day and to dry out all our wet gear so that we can stay out there indefinitely. But at night, I just let the stove burn out with a wood pile and kindling and matches. It's all set up so that in the morning when I wake up, I just unzip my sleeping bag on one side and I feed the stove without leaving the sleeping bag, and I light the stove without leaving my sleeping bag, just one arm exposed. And I close that door and I zip up again and I wait for the tent to heat up before I get out. So I'm not freezing in the morning.
Yeah, okay.
My sleep system keeps me warm. Now, if you're not running your stove all night, well, then that's that much less melt that's going to happen.
Here's a question for you guys, by the way. Nate, I'm pretty sure it will.
I got mine at Lowe's, but I know that I don't. Depends on your home. If you got a big home hardware, maybe the one by me in Burlington is really small, so it wouldn't. But
yeah, I don't know if Home Hardware has it. I know for a fact Home Depot does, because Nate and I live in the same town, and that's where I got mine years ago, and they have a big heating and cooling and ducting section, so that'll be there.
Yeah, at the bottom of my street, there's a Renault Depot, and it's got that stuff too.
Yeah, I bought a huge roll of it, and I got some sitting right over here in my utility room still.
Yeah. So, hi to RV Kids TV. I'm trying to keep up with the people who are appearing and disappearing in the side chat, but it's tough. I got my my full set of mods doing it for me as well. Hi, Tom Tsetsinus. Sorry. Hi, kids. RV Kids TV. Hi to everyone who's joining us. It's nice to see you all.
Yeah, and I agree with Martin about letting the stove run cold whenever I've used a hot tent. That's what I've done. Especially for sleeping bag can handle it. You don't have to worry about, again, the melt. You don't have to worry about getting up and feeding the fire. If you got 3 or 4 guys and everyone's going pee every couple hours, I guess it's not so terrible. But
yeah,
I don't have to worry about the stove shifting and creating a carbon monoxide problem. Just a lot easier. Now, if you don't do enough,
no, Mike, don't be saying stuff like that. Sorry, Mike. Sorry. Don't get everybody terrified of carbon monoxide. That is not an issue at all.
Well, what I was going to say is, wouldn't you put down like a layer of ply or something to put your stove onto?
Guys, like seriously, I've traveled in the north for months and months on end with First Nations people with a stove going all night because you want heat. That's why you have a hot tent. You want heat, okay? And you can actually deal with the melt on the snow. But carbon monoxide, I have so many outdoor education people cutting the whole programs down right now because they were worried about carbon monoxide. So sorry, Mike, I'm getting really
no, it's okay. I didn't mean to scare anybody. And if you're really worried about it, the alarms are really cheap as well. I've never really brought in one of those, but
yeah,
the reason I don't run it at night mostly is just because I just don't want to get up and put wood in there.
Right. That's the reason. That's the reason. It's not because I'm worried about something happening to the stove. I mean, there's always a possibility of some kind of backdraft and smoke in your tent in the night or something like that. But the worst that happens is you wake up coughing, you know.
It would have to be a weird.
I'm not particularly worried about a fire breaking out in the tent overnight.
No, because that's what they're built to do, right? That's what the whole thing
Yeah,
is
I mean,
built to do.
anything can go wrong. And the tents, if you buy a good quality tent, they're all made with a fire retardant material anyway. So it should catch in flames or anything like that. No, it's just that I don't want to have to get up in the night. I mean, there's nothing worse than having to get up several times in the night to stoke that fire and throw on some logs and stuff like that. I'd rather just sleep cold. And I mean, when your face is cold but your body's warm, you will sleep really, really, really soundly. And so you can sleep through the whole night and bring a pee bottle with you, just like a Nalgene bottle or something, one of those wide mouth 1 liter Nalgene bottles to pee in. So that you don't have to go outside to pee or something like that. You just pee in the Nalgene bottle.
Label that pee bottle.
And or rinse it really, really well.
I went one time with Joe, and he uses the pee bottle frequently. Smart, but one time he had like a yellow one.
Yeah.
And I was like, a clear yellow pee bottle. And I was like, why do you use that one? Eventually, you're gonna make a mistake one day. But yeah, no, that's a good idea. Because otherwise, even in the tent, even if you're not running the stove, it's still warmer than it is outside.
You know what
I use a pee bottle in summer. I mean, I never get out of the tent to pee in the night unless it's really, really warm and I just want to get out of the tent. And then I'll I got to pee, might as well go and cool off and stuff like that on a nice starry night or something like that. But I mean, ordinarily I will not rouse myself from that torpor. I'm just gonna pee in a pee bottle and go roll over and go right back to sleep.
Now, if you guys want to be sure not to mistake the pee bottle for a water bottle, what I use is a laundry detergent bottle.
Yeah. Like in the summer, I don't even bring like a Nalgene to drink. I'll just drink right out of the Be-Free water filter or whatever.
Right.
So I probably wouldn't bring one in the summer to pee anyways. I just usually unzip the tent on my knees and just pee right at the front and make sure you're sloped a little bit or dig a trench or something. But
how do we end up talking about pee, guys?
Well, it's an important thing. People worry an awful lot about peeing and pooping in the woods, and they worry about it more in winter. Like, how do you poo in the woods and stuff like that? One thing about peeing in a pee bottle, I don't even empty it outside. Right? If I've got a bottle of a hot pee, there's two things I can do with it. One is in the sleeping bag and just turn that problem into a solution and just warm the inside of my sleeping bag if that's necessary. And if not, I'll just lean over and I'll pour it in some corner of the tent, and it'll just, make a little pencil diameter hole, and it'll drill right down to the ground, and there'll be no odor or anything like that in there. Your pee bottle is empty and ready to refill again if necessary. So I don't even bother getting out of the tent.
Martin, when you get to our age, you're going to refill that bottle again. Let's be honest here, boys.
Yeah, more than once a night it happens. Yeah. All the more reason why I don't want to have to get up, So
I like how we've transitioned into the second part of the talk where, what do you do when you're actually in the woods? Do you guys, by the way, do any of you guys have like some best practices or like tips and tricks that people who are considering doing this but maybe aren't experts, or they've only gone once, they haven't gone or whatever, that they should bear in mind?
Everything freezes, including your water and water bottles. So if you've got water bottles, like an Nalgene bottle or any other kind of bottle, stick it in the snow. Whether it's in your shelter or if it's outside or something like that, just stick it in the snow upside down, because water freezes from the top down. I have had water bottles frozen solid when I wake up in the morning in a cold tent because I don't have the stove running at night. or in a hot tent when I don't have the stove running. I mean, but if you just bury it in the snow, snow is a fantastic insulator. And
Yes, it is.
Of the water will simply not escape, and it'll be cold. There might be some ice crystals in there, and if there's any ice at all, it'll be at the top of the bottle, which will be at its bottom because you've got it upside down. So that's the thing. And remember that the food you're going to bring is all going to freeze. So if you have snacks like that, you might think that soft, chewy granola bar is a great snack in summer, but you'll crack your teeth on that in winter. So your fuel is something you have to consider too. A lot of fuels will not light in really, really cold temperatures. Like I like to use a Trangia stove when I'm camping in an igloo or a Quincy.
Okay.
But alcohol and most other fuels, you don't ignite the liquid, you ignite the vapor that comes off.
The vapor above it, yeah.
Yeah, so if you fill a Trangia stove with alcohol and you try to light it with a match, you can put a lit match right there on top of it and it will not light. You're going to have to take a piece of paper or a piece of birch bark or something like that and let it sit there and light that and let that warm the alcohol a bit until it starts to vaporize, and then it'll just combust. It'll go up and then you're off and running. So if you have a little Trangia stove full of alcohol, keep that maybe in an inner pocket or something so that you don't have to preheat it. Or there are other fuels that you can use, like gas and stuff like that. It's pretty good. Although I don't use those stoves myself. But keep in mind that there are some fuels that you're going to have to prime and preheat, and lines freeze and stuff like that. So if you're dealing with pumps and lines and things like that, be prepared that they could freeze up and jam and stick. Those are real considerations to anticipate in cold weather. So best practices is think of everything from your water and your food to every piece of gear, including your stove, and ask yourself, how will it perform in really cold temperatures? Plastic break in cold temperatures.
Even sometimes your axe can get a little more brittle if it's a real cold day. That's why, like, in the Grandsfers booklets and like a lot of traditional guys, they'll say if you're going out at like -40 to harvest some wood, tuck your axe inside your jacket. I'm not saying that axe heads shatter or anything, but it will slightly brittle up the edge a little bit if it's real cold out there and it's a pretty carbon steel axe like they all are. But you don't have to worry about your steak going bad, that's for sure, because that'll freeze.
No, that'll freeze solid. You have to include some thaw time in your cook times because it will be frozen solid, right? But that's another nice thing. There's no critters. You don't really have to hang your food. I like to anyway because there's plenty of critters out there, pine martens and stuff like that, that will get into your food, stuff like that. But so some people still hang their food from food bags, but you don't have to worry about bears. I don't have to bring bear spray. I normally bring an EpiPen because I'm allergic to bees and wasp stings. I don't have to bring that. So there's all kinds of advantages to winter camping. And perhaps the greatest advantage, no bugs at all.
None,
zero.
It's so beautiful. Makes me a little, get a little tear in my eye.
I think one of my suggestions, especially for new people, is to go with someone who has a fair amount of experience, because there's often a lot of misconceptions about how bad it's going to be, how cold it's going to be, and frequently, especially if you're moving, you have a tougher time keeping cool than you do warm. You can be wearing quite, if it's a really windy day, it's a different situation. But if it's even at -20, you don't need to be wearing very much if you're snowshoeing through. And if you got like a typical like ski type snowboard jacket or like a lot of these down coats, you're gonna sweat right through those things. So yeah, and if you're really worried about it, drive in to start and do whatever you want to do. And if it's really not working for you, you can leave right away, right?
Just drive right out.
I definitely wouldn't go like a week deep your first time if you've never done any of this stuff before. And clothing choices are really important based on what you're doing. If you are going to be spending a lot of time by a fire, well, like Gore-Tex snow pants and rain jackets probably aren't a good choice.
Nope.
But if you're going to be a hot tent, then it's not as big a deal. You just got to be careful you don't melt your stuff on the stove, right?
Yeah.
But having someone who really knows what they're doing, I found the first few times I went, makes you feel a lot better about it because there's a lot of stuff you just don't know.
Can I say something about clothing? So I'm a big proponent of wool garments and natural fibers, hides, and things like that. The biggest advantage is that they breathe. So I like merino wool base layers. They're not itchy, they're very soft, they're very comfortable. They're costly, but they're terrific. Or a synthetic base layer. But then over that, I wear wool. So I'll wear a wool base layer, and I have wool pants. And the wool pants I have are thick wool, and they're baggy. They're much roomier than they need to be. But when you're snowshoeing, you don't want to be constricted. You don't want the pant fabric clinging to your underlayer. And you don't want anything that's too form-fitting, because you have to lift your knees a lot higher when you're snowshoeing. And
yeah, you want like baggy pajama pants.
Yeah, exactly. They have to fit you sort of big and baggy, like loose pajamas or loose track pants or something like that. And the same thing with my upper body. I'll wear a shirt. All my shirts are oversized. They're bigger than need to be. My wool jackets are all bigger than they need to be, and multiple layers. And here's the key thing, actually. Even if you're just going out on a day trip, people say, "Oh, dress in layers," and then they go out in layers, but they have no place to take off their layers and put them. There's no room left in their pack, or there's no room on their pulk, or nothing to hold, right? And so
so what was the point?
Yeah, they're wearing all their layers. They might have them unzipped and unbuttoned or something, but they're still sweating in there like crazy. So make sure that you leave a little bit of room so you can shed layers, because when you are hauling sled, it is really slow. You're not moving fast. You just have to take your time and put in the work, dragging this sled behind you. The conditions are not always ideal. There's a lot of uphills and downhills. The sled will topple, and then you got to stop and get out of the little harness and go and right the sled and lift it and stuff like that. And then you've lost your momentum now. Now you got to pull that train again from a state of no momentum. And uphill is really, really exhausting sometimes, depending on the grade. If you're going through bush, and it's really strenuous. And in deep powder, you're going to be huffing and puffing. So you're going to discover that your hat and gloves come off. It's really cold outside, but there's so much blood that even your hands, you'll be comfortable barehanding it out there, unless it's really, really windy. So make sure that you have wool layers that breathe. Make them baggy so that the clothes, like this is a very form-fitting sweater. I wouldn't wear this unless I was just going to be still. But if I'm going to be working, I want all of my layers to be baggy so that they act like a bellows. With every movement, the air inside, causes a bellows effect, and that hot moisture is expressed out through my clothes. And
by the way, a layer of air can be a good insulator as well.
That's right. A layer, So you want some air. You don't want skin tight clothing and form fitting clothing. Like all of the stuff that they sell, I find in most outdoor shops, MEC and places like that. There's an awful lot of what I call outdoor urban fashion. It all looks great on the ski slopes and on the snowshoe trails and the ski trails for the day. When you go back at the end of the day and you're kind of wet inside, that's fine. But when the sun sets, and the sun sets really early in winter, when you're winter camping, you're going to feel really cold and clammy unless your clothes have the capacity to vent moisture. And that form-fitting stuff isn't great, especially the synthetics. So I really recommend wool layers that breathe and really, really baggy for ease of movement and to express that hot air. And one way to tell if you're properly insulated from the outside is this: you should feel comfortable, not hot, not warm. You shouldn't even feel warm, just sort of riding the cool edge. And when you brush up against snow, it should never melt on you. If snow that falls on you sits on you and melts, that means the outside of your clothing is way too warm, which means you are bleeding way too much heat out there. You are not properly insulated from the outside. So I find that that's a good practice. Have enough layers to make sure that snow sheds off you, but not so many that you're sweating on the inside.
Another reason.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, it's going to be real short. Another reason why I like synthetics, especially wool, is if I'm next to a fire and an ember lands on my expensive Gore-Tex Arc'teryx or North Face, you got a hole. And as soon as you got a hole, you got ingress for water and stuff. Whereas if I'm wearing my wool and an ember gets on it, I do this. Right? No problem. Doesn't melt.
Yeah, and wool can actually be, if you're just going winter camping, you don't have to spend like thousands of dollars. Wool can be quite cheap. The pants I have are from Big Bill. They're made in Canada. I think they're like $120 or $30 new. You can go to Valley Village and very easily they have probably dozens of old, 100%, 80% wool sweaters sitting right there for like $5, $10. Yeah, if you're gonna get the long underwear, it's a little bit more expensive, but you don't have to be spending, $500 on some kind of fleece jacket or a down jacket.
Yeah, no, that's true. I find that a lot of us who are into the bushcraft and the I'll say bushcraft because that's where my main thrust is, and I find that we're more guilty of this than some other sects. If Ray Mears buys something, half of us will buy it as well. Well, he doesn't even buy it. If Ray Mears wears something, half of us are like going to his website and buying it.
And you know what's really nice about outdoor clothes too? If you take something you don't really care about, getting destroyed, ruined, or whatever, it's a lot more freeing. If you go there with something really expensive and you're worried about that's all you're gonna think about all day, every day. But if you have, that old wool sweater that's been sitting in your closet for 20 years,
you don't care.
It's tore up, not a big deal.
No deal. Yeah, no.
But you'll just enjoy yourself more than having, all that expensive stuff.
But yeah, and at the end of the day, we're out there to enjoy being out there. Am I right, guys? Like nobody is going to go winter camping if they hate the woods in winter, unless of course they're being dragged there by Air Force personnel. But I even back then I didn't hate the forest in winter. But like, I think that anything you can do to give yourself that kind of freedom, like you're talking about, Mike, you do it. You're not out there to be styling and profiling. You're either alone or you're with, like Martin with his wife, or Kevin with your girlfriend, or, me with my thoughts. You don't have to look good for anyone. You have to be comfortable. This is true in plus 30 weather next to a lake where you're batting away flies, as it is at minus 30, in a snowdrift. You have to be comfortable no matter what. So Goodwill can be a very, very good resource.
Yeah, Goodwill, Salvation Army, all those kinds of places, all those discount stores, secondhand stores. I've just bought a ton of wool clothes over the years. Sweaters, base layers, wool pants, wool shirts, wool jackets, wool mitts, hats, scarves. I don't know, maybe half of the wool garments that I have that I still use, including this sweater, this army sweater actually, all from places like Goodwill and other discount stores. Just fantastic.
I used to wear one of those sweaters.
Yeah. I don't like. I mean, this is fine if I'm going out for the day snowshoeing, and I know, but it's kind of form fitting, and I get sweaty under the arms and stuff like that. So I don't like to wear this winter camping. As comfortable and warm as it is, I don't like wearing it. Well, I get too sweaty under the arms.
It's technically garrison wear anyway. Mm-hmm. It's not really for what we do. Hitting the woods, enjoying the woods. It's kind of to be worn on an air base or an army base when it's cold weather.
Yeah.
So I can see that. I can see that. You know what? Kevin's not talking. And if Kevin's not talking, there must be something wrong in the world, because...
No, I'm just listening. Actually, it's good to listen.
But you should be talking more than I do, because you guys are all like the guys I look to. And Dennis, but he live streams the same night as me. You guys are the ones who I look to for gleaning knowledge for this. So the more I talk, the more unknowledged information is going out there. I mean, I know how, certain things are general no matter what season you're out. I know that. But, I'm someone who wants to get into winter camping.
Well, I'm curious about what people think about what to do out there, because the question I get asked the most, I mean, besides like how do you stay warm, and what do you do about going to the bathroom? And the answer to that is the same thing that you do in the summer, pretty much. Mm-hmm. It's not very different. In fact, you can even use snow to wipe yourself. I mean, yeah. You just have to make sure you dry yourself afterwards.
No,
that works very well. Snowballs, they work very well on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes. It's cold. You'll pucker right up, but it works. You'll be clean. It's like a bidet. It's made to be a bidet.
I agree with you, but no.
It works. Yeah. But you want to dab yourself dry afterwards.
No. I've done it. No.
It's cold, eh?
Yeah, I've never really done that.
Yeah, no, I've done that. It works, and I tried it because I found out that apparently this is what Inuit people used to use. Well, of course, that was what was most abundant and always at hand.
because they didn't have toilet paper.
And yeah, well, the thing is, it will make your bum wet, right? So you've got to have a little bit of toilet paper to sort of do some dabbing afterwards, right? Or something like that.
Then you might as well use it then.
Yeah, no, you can use that, but the point is, you don't have to worry about bringing an entire roll or something like that. You actually need extremely little, And then when you're done, you just pop it in your mouth and swallow it.
Okay.
God, man.
Martin, stop drinking whiskey, for God's sakes.
Martin's right. That is a way that my trippers have done it. I tried
Without the swallowing part, I hope.
I put a hole in the snow. I poop, and then I use the toilet paper, and then I burn the toilet paper, warm my hands on the fire, and then put snow over the embers. And then so in the springtime, there's just the feces, and then it will decompose in 2 weeks. Everything's fine. So yeah.
Toilet paper is not that heavy.
No, that's true. I do want to just get to the side chat. First of all, two or three things that I've bloody lost. From Ken Jones, I might take you up on that. Thank you very much. But for Kevin, there's a question that I've bloody lost. Oh yeah, Nate Muskook is asking, that big white anorak I've seen you wear, what material is it made of?
Oh yeah, so that's canvas, just like well, I don't know exactly the same canvas as your tent, but it's the same idea. It's a lifesaver.
Where'd you get it?
Lure of the North made it for me. Great people, great company, fantastic people. Actually,
I know them.
They are the real deal.
Yeah, I actually only know them because of Martin. He's posted some stuff by them before, and I'm like, I have got to get in on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that anorak is that's off the hook, man. I love that thing.
Yeah, they taught me a lot, actually. So when I first met them, we were tripping, and basically I had the Gore-Tex jacket, and they said, okay, well, the anorak. And I actually remember the First Nations people telling me that as well. But I'm thinking, really, it's because the idea, to me, it reminds me of cotton, and cotton kills, right? So, but it's not. It's canvas. So it's breathable. So imagine going across a lake when it's minus 20, wind chill minus 30. It breathes. So when you're sweating, like Martin said, you're breathing or sweating through your wool. And I wear full wool, layers of wool underneath me, like wool power or merino wool. Merino wool is a type of wool. So the sweat comes out of the wool, and then the wind is actually breathing through the canvas. So you're breathing, and so you're not sweating, because sweating, is not good. But at the same time, it's a windbreaker. And when we get to have lunch, I pull the anorak off, I get my wool off, I shake the wool off, and all the frozen crystals of my sweat comes off it. I put the wool back on again. I'm dry. I put the anorak back on again. It was amazing. They also show me to use mucklucks, or winter moccasins, they would call it. And you were thinking that's crazy, but at -5, it is crazy because it's too wet. It's soggy wet, especially if you're cold tenting. You don't want to do that, but in hot tenting, you can dry them at night.
But at -10, they become magic.
Oh, in -10, -20, especially dry conditions, you actually feel the ground underneath you. It is an amazing idea, and they're warm because you can layer, and you can actually put your sock, and then you use those things you get at Canadian Tire for your the
foot warmers.
Yeah, and you do that, and then you get in the tent, and you dry everything at night, and you hang the mucklucks up at night, and it's an amazing experience. I would not use those in warm temperatures, but in normal temperatures, especially.
Look at that.
There you go. He's got them. So especially with snowshoes, because they fit snowshoes. The only negative I find, especially the ones that Martin has, is that the tread is very slippery on snow. So if you're walking on the snow with that pair in particular, without snowshoes, you'll slip and slide everywhere. So what you should do is get you go to Lure of the North site, and there's YouTube showing it. You basically put a tread on them. It's almost like a melted rubber.
There it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so do that. Or just wear your snowshoes all the time. And when you're in the real north, in a real winter, you don't take snowshoes off unless you go to bed. So
Now here's the thing. I don't have those old style snowshoes with the whatever they are. Are they tendons or strips of
the babiche? Yeah,
babiche? Yeah, I don't have that kind of snowshoes. I've got the modern ones. They're GV, so they're native owned, but they're the plastic and metal ones just because they're a whole lot more affordable. And when my wife and I decided to get into snowshoeing about 12 years ago, I got into snowshoeing because my doctor said you got to do something in the winter because you trim down in the summer and you balloon in the winter. And dude, and I said, yeah, but I don't like skiing. He said, no, here's what you do, man. You snowshoe because you're going to use up so many calories. It's not like just walking through, knee-high snow or anything. It's like because of, well, you guys know this. It's a lot of work to learn how to snowshoe. I mean, granted, here we are, years later, and we can all run in our snowshoes. But I mean, it was a fitness thing for me to get me into the woods in the winter because I had never been big on winter sports. So we just bought what we could afford. We saw these ones in there, they're local-ish, and so we decided to go for those. We were at Mountain Equipment Co-op. But if I was to, because man, I love those winter moccasins you made. And I would love to have an excuse to do those myself.
Super comfortable, warmest footwear I've ever, and incredibly light. They're lighter than any other boots I own.
Yeah.
They breathe, so your feet stay dry, and they're so supple. I mean, even when this sort of rubber tread that you put on, I mean, just look how soft they are. Right? I mean, it's like wearing slippers all the time.
But they're not going to fit into my fancy high-tech snowshoes.
You can. The problem is the bindings on the modern technical snowshoes. They tend to sort of constrict your foot, and so you've got this binding that's sort of going to grip around here, right? Like that, and that can interfere with the blood flow a little bit. So, it depends on the specific binding. I have not tried these with my modern technical snowshoes, which I love to wear also, but I use them for different purposes usually. Depends on snow conditions, how deep the snow is. If there's a packed trail, how dense and tangled the woods are going to be that I'm going through. On crown land, sometimes I'm not in an open area. Sometimes I'm going through, through marshy, tangled areas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Dense bush, and having that long traditional snowshoe with that tail and stuff like that can be hard. You get caught up on branches and stuff like that. And the technicals are a little easier to maneuver and back up when you need to and stuff like that. So sometimes I prefer wearing the technicals, but when I'm hauling the sled, I like the big snowshoes. I like the extra flotation, and also the float, that is the tracks that you leave with the wide snowshoes are just wide enough so that your pulk or your freight toboggan will just fall into that float and will track better as a result. Whereas with the technicals, the float is a lot smaller and narrower. They're more discrete prints. They don't sort of overlap and create a big trail.
And when you're trying to pack down the footprint for your tent, the bigger ones are a bonus because of that, right? Because you got a lot more space.
No, actually, it's I find it easier with the other ones. Things pack down a lot better with the technicals.
Your
smaller footprint, so you can press things. You can press things down a little better. But I mean, that's not a big deal. I mean, you're going to revisit that anyway. Like the first thing I do when I have decided where we're going to camp, where we're going to set up the hot tent or the cold tent or the igloo or whatever it is we're going to be sleeping in, is once I've scoped out where things are, where the resources are that I need, where the water is going to be, and where we're going to make a latrine, we're going to harvest, and where that's going to be, where we want to situate our shelter, I'll just tamp out a circle. I'll do that absolutely first because I want to let that firm up, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it again. Right, and then I'm going to go and harvest some wood and stuff like that, and cut the poles for the bipod to hold my stovepipe and stuff like that. Process the wood and get all that ready, and then I'll tamp it down again before I set up my tent, so that I'm not post holing inside my shelter while I'm trying to set it up.
Yeah, exactly.
That can be comedy gold.
Yeah,
I got a new pair of snowshoes last year. They're they're called hybrid. The company's Faber Winter Guide. And I've actually never seen anyone else that makes them like this. They have a traditional ash frame.
Mm-hmm.
They're like an elongated bear paw design, but instead of the babiche, it has plastic floats with holes in them, and uses like a snowshoe binding. So there's crampons on the bottom, and the plastic has sort of little pokies as well. So they give pretty good flotation, but they also are better on ice and stuff like that. So I have a big traditional pair of Huron ones. They're whatever 42 or 46 by 14, but these ones I have are 10 by 36. And so I use them instead of like a plastic new snowshoe. I guess they're a couple $100, but I was really happy with them. I used them in tobogganing last year in very deep snow, and I was sinking not as well as like a Huron pair, but definitely a lot better than a modern. And you still had the grip on the bottom when things got icy or on a pack trail. So those Faber, I think they're called Winter Guide or something like that.
Here,
FABER.
Boom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just bought them a year and a half ago or whatever, and they were great. And they look a little bit cooler, I guess, if that matters to you, than the modern ones. They sort of combine the best of both.
Yeah, it's good to know, because let's face it, when you're trying to pull those pulks, you kind of need some good.
You need at least two pairs. Like one pair of snowshoes is not going to do you for everything. You're eventually going to need at least a small and a big. And
yeah.
So, can I return? I'm curious with the others on the panel. Like, why do you go winter camping? Like, what is the appeal, and what do you do out there? Because people ask me all the time, how do you poop in the woods? How do you stay warm? And then what do you do out there? People imagine it's really boring and there's nothing to do, and I find it far from that. But I'm curious what other people on the panel think.
I saw Kevin's answer.
Yeah, Kevin drinks.
What?
Is that what you do out there, Kevin? You just?
I do poop a lot. I do.
No, you sip whiskey. You sip whiskey, right? That's what you do out there. Yeah, no, like why do you go out there in winter? What's the appeal?
The cool thing about hot tenting, I mean, I've been winter camping for a long time. I've done cold tenting. I did a lot of traveling with just a tarp, because I did work in Fish and Wildlife where I had to pick up wolf poop for a job, and I had to really travel. So, and that's really effective, all depending on the time of year and stuff like that. But hot tenting, you basically, I think it takes away the problem we have in the winter. It's a really long night. I mean, if you're cold tenting, you basically get to camp, you set up camp, have dinner, you get dark at 4:30, 5 o'clock. You go inside your tent, you go in your sleeping bag, maybe you read a book, get your light on, but you're trying to stay warm, and then waiting for the night. Whereas hot tenting, it's like a movable cabin. You get the tent set up, you get the fire going inside, you get a stew going, you get camaraderie, you start talking, you start playing cards, and it's like 1 a.m. It doesn't matter. You got a candle lantern, and you're enjoying winter. And I think that's the big thing about winter, is that just drives me crazy at times. It's like, if you're a Canadian, we love all 4 seasons. We love our country. And if you don't like winter, what the hell is your problem? Like winter is a phenomenal place. It's silent. It's beautiful. It's a great time to see wildlife. It's a great time to track wildlife. And in the far north, you talk to anybody who lives in the north, that's the most beautiful time, because they can travel better. So get out and enjoy it. And if you're sitting at home watching Netflix and trying to winter out, then you're just going to get depressed. I mean, you really are. So get out and enjoy it. And
no, finish your thought, but I want to jump in right after that thought, because you hit on something that matters to me.
No, go ahead. No, I'm done. Yeah,
Okay.
I enjoy winter, and I think the big issue, though, to be quite honest, and I'm just sort of an odd duck. Well, yeah, I hope I'm not an odd duck, but you can't do it in one night. The moment you get out of that vehicle, and I've done that with people that've gone winter camping for the first time with me. The moment they get out of that vehicle and it's minus 30, they look at me as if you're going to die. And I said, trust me, we will not die, because you're not acclimatized. You're used to going from the parking lot to the mall, and you will get cold going from the parking lot to the mall. But after day 2, you will not. It'll be minus 20. You won't even look at the temperature anymore, because it's a dry cold.
Mm-hmm.
Further north you go, it's a dry cold. It's totally different than actually Southern Ontario. Go to Lake Ontario, it's a lot colder than actually go to up to Timmins. And then you get acclimatized to it, and you enjoy it, and you feel invigorated, you feel alive. It's just like summer camping. And then actually think about it. When summertime comes, remember June? Remember the bugs, how bad they are? Like winter camping is beautiful. And especially if you got a hot tent, because you can dry everything inside. And literally I can go for days and days and days. But what's going on now that I'm really fearful, and it's been going on for a long time, is, and I get it. I get people that don't have the time, but it's a weekend warrior thing. They go for one night and they experience it and they check it off the list and they say, that's fantastic. You will not experience wilderness, whether it's fall, spring, winter, whatever, if you do it for one night. And I get it. I understand that. I do it myself because I'm busy and I have a job. But if you do it for one night and just check it off your list,
forget about it.
Yeah,
100%. I try not to go for anything less than 3 nights. Even 2 nights sometimes feels like, okay, you set up and then you have one full day and then, okay, time to go home.
Man, I envy you guys who can, like, I'm going to hit the woods for a week. Because I get, like, you know, I take whatever time I can get. And that's sometimes an overnighter. Sometimes it's an afternoon. You know, a trip I have coming up, you know, is I'm going to go, like, for the weekend. And to me, that's a big thing. Now, granted, it's because I have a young child and then a really young child. Once they're both sort of not young anymore, my time will most likely open up.
How young?
My wife also does it.
How young?
I have an 8-year-old who comes hiking with me on a lot of my videos because I know, Kevin, you watch all my videos, right?
When she or he was 2. Okay, so 8 years old is way too old for them to be out. So start when they're young, and I'm not criticizing.
Oh, yeah, no, I do. She's been coming hiking with me for a long time, but I also have a 1-year-old, and it's more about being home to help the wife with getting everything going. You know,
take the wife, take the family.
I would love to. She is willing to go camping so long as it's what I and you guys would probably call glamping. There's got to be like a flush toilet somewhere.
Well, then
ease her into it. Got to ease her into it.
I'm
do that, and then one day just trick her.
Yeah, and very soon you'll be able to take both. And now you say, okay, I'm taking both the kids, and I'm going to be gone for a week. And now you look like a hero, and you get to do what you want to do. There's just my son's 3, and we've done some whatever drive-in camping RV stuff. So he's going to go on his first canoe trip this year. And I probably should have gone a bit earlier, but he's very like routine oriented. And even as recent as this summer, he's going to bed at like 5:36 and sleeping 12, 13 hours. So it's kind of hard to like wheel up in June or July in Algonquin and he goes to bed and it's still bright out for 3 hours. But anyways, we're going to take him this summer, and it's been a little tough for me the last 3 and a bit years, but the golden window is opening where, you know, I can take him and my wife will be okay, see you later. And she does like to do summer camping. She will probably never do the winter thing, but that's okay. That's where I get the hot tent, and then me and him can go. And then,
yeah, and I sort of see my development along the same lines because I think it was last summer, it was the summer before. I took Cody, like the last weekend, right going into September, like her last long weekend before school starts. I took her to a campsite about an hour and a half from Montreal, kind of thing. But it was just a father-daughter weekend. Of course, I did a video about it. I drank a terrible beer on that weekend on camera.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, but she thought it was funny, so I left it in the video. But you know, like, she's game for anything. Just this, like, past summer, we hit up Tobermory. We rented an Airbnb cabin, and I took her on a canoe for the first time, and she's there, man. So if I decided to take her, you know, if I get a hot tent and I'm like, hey, you want to try something really crazy? She'll be there. I won't do that until I've gone camping with someone who's good at it first. Like, you know, because I'm not going to, hey, I bought a hot tent. Here I go. And end up dead in a snowdrift somewhere, you know, like.
You can just go do it in your backyard.
Yeah.
We could have, except my wife and daughter wanted a pool, so I don't have the room anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the pool will freeze.
They do. Thank the gods they do.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, we're at 10 o'clock, so this is the time when I usually open it up. But I would like to talk to you guys about what do you do when you're packing up and going home and, say, covering Kevin's entire living room with a drying tent. Best practices, anything like
straight gear bomb. I live in a townhome. I got a single car garage, and when I come home from any trip, you go walk in there, and the walls are plastered with nylon and sleeping bags and whatever else. I just do it the second I get home. I do it because if you forget, you know, you're gonna forget, and then you'll wreck stuff. And
yep,
it just takes 10 minutes. You just rip everything out, even if you got to throw it on the floor, hang it on whatever, bikes, anything. That's it. And then I come back a day or two later, and
it's all dry. pack it up.
I have a room upstairs. I mean, it's a sewing room. It's full of furniture and stuff. And I'll take my hot tent and I'll bring it up there and I'll open it up and it's, damp and there's frozen snow and ice on it and stuff like that. I can't get everything off
Right.
when you're out there, when you're packing it up. It never packs back quite as small as it was when you packed it up at home.
Never does.
Anticipate more volume when you're packing it up.
Yeah.
It's a 25% explosion.
Yeah. I just drape it over pieces of furniture and stuff like that, and the sewing machine and the ironing board is set up, and everything is just sort of draped up. And I have one edge of the tent over. We have floor vents with forced air heating. And so that forces hot air into it, and it breathes. So obviously the hot air gets accumulates and trapped inside, and eventually it gets forced out through the pores in the canvas, and it dries out completely dry. And then I'll go up and I might turn it inside out, or I might turn it around and make sure that it's absolutely dry, and I'll just leave it up there for a day or two or whatever. Some people hang them up in their basement. Very often a basement, if there's a furnace in there, is actually fairly warm from the radiant heat of the furnace. So if you have a place that you can hang it up downstairs in a basement or something like that. Garages are not usually great. They tend to, in winter, they tend to be cold unless you have a heated garage. And so that's probably not the best thing to do. If you're really, really stuck, you can hang your canvas tent or sleeping bag or anything on a clothesline in winter. And the moisture in it on a sunny day and on a cold sunny day, the moisture will just leave it through sublimation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll just sublimate out of it, and then you can take it out. So if it's, because these things, they're wet, they tend to smell smoky. Your hot tent might smell a little smoky.
I love that smell though.
Yeah. Oh, I love the smell of that. I like going up into the attic and pulling out the backpacks and everything smells of wood smoke in the living room. You're packing it up and stuff like that. So I actually love that smell. But not everyone does. Your clothes will smell of wood smoke. But exactly like Mike said, as soon as you get home, rip open your duffel bags and your packs and just take everything out and hang it up, and don't worry about it, and maybe do the dishes, your dirty dishes and stuff like that. Yeah. And then forget about it. Just let it dry, and you walk around a house that's got nylon and cotton and wool clothing draped everywhere, drying out. But then you have peace of mind when you put it away that it's absolutely bone dry. It's not going to melt on you.
Yeah, because you don't want your stuff to rot, right?
No,
yeah,
my brother
it will
did
rot,
that
and it'll
once,
stink. It will stink really bad.
Or you get mold. My brother did that on a tent once. It's a cheap one, but it's still, you got to wash it with vinegar, and it was all kinds of grief. The quick tip I'd have is to be very organized. My stuff used to be all over the place, unlabeled. And eventually about 3 or 4 years ago, I spent an entire day labeling it. So right now, if you told me, okay, you have a window to go camping for a week, short of food, I could go upstairs right now in my garage and probably within an hour at most, I could pull out everything I need and it can be done. And it's a bit of grief to do it, but otherwise you find you're missing stuff and you go pack and you're like, all right, I can't find this pot. You got to go buy a new one, or, where's my gloves, or all kinds of stuff. So to me, I hang it up right away. A couple days to come back, I put it all away, and I try and do it relatively quick.
Yeah, that sounds legit. Sounds legit. And we know that if it's Kevin, you just drape everything in your living room.
I live in a really small place. Sorry, guys. The good thing is I have a fireplace, so I basically put everything. I mean, the funnier one was when I brought my electric snowblower in to defrost.
Yes.
It just wouldn't work at all. And the neighbors, I live in a small town, so they're like, you got a battery operated snowblower? I went, yeah, it was on sale. And yeah, it froze. And then I brought it in with the tent to defrost. But at the same time, it's like Mike said, to be organized. After my last trip, I just hauled everything in, and my daughter, she was with me that week, and she just walked in. She goes, "Oh, Dad."
Yeah.
So it becomes comical. It's the man cave.
Yeah, the garage, I agree, generally is not a good idea. That's one nice thing about a townhome. I'm an end unit, but my garage is on the inside, so it's blocked on almost all the sides except for the front. So usually it's 5 degrees in there or whatever, even if it's cold outside. So it may take longer to do it. Again, I haven't tried to dry out a hot tent in there. I know that would take a lot longer than nylon stuff, but at least it keeps it in there and keeps my wife happy from not smoking up the house.
Well, I saw it on some, in fact, it was Christine, my partner, that actually showed me Facebook image of somebody that put their homemade hot tent away wet and then brought it out with mold. I'm not sure if you saw the image, but
I haven't seen it.
Full of black mold and pink mold. Like there was, it was full. And then he was saying like, "What do I do?" And the people that were answering were right. Like throw it out. Like it's
done. Yeah.
It's impossible to clean that out. Like,
hey, you know who impresses me, Kevin? You said something that, man, Camper Christina, man, making those tents.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a huge undertaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't say I was going to do it, but I'm so impressed.
Yeah. Another one is the Wild Yam. The Wild Yam has also just uploaded a couple of videos about a baker-style canvas tent that she has made that she uses winter camping with a hot stove, and she has a complete instructional video on how she did it and all that. And
cool. Baker tent would be really cool to have.
Yeah. That I really like the idea of a baker tent, almost more than the snow trekker style that I have. It seems to me it has more possibilities to it.
Yeah, I did question Dwayne at Snow Trekker when I saw him in the fall about him making a bigger tent because they'll make an idea, whatever. And it comes down to, he goes, well, how many would I sell? Would it make any sense? And I get it. Bloke in the Woods YouTube, I watched it. He made one on his own.
What kind of sewing machine would you need for that, though?
It would have to be a. Well, I'm not an expert at all, but it would have to be one of those heavy duty sewing machines. Snow machine. Oh my God, like better pour another whiskey snow machine.
Well, I know people have sewn them with ordinary machines, but I mean, you're really, really risking the life of your machine, I think.
Yeah.
Because those are thick seams, right? Like they're double folded and stuff like that. You're going through several layers of canvas. You need a big needle, and you're usually using a much heavier kind of thread or upholstery thread or something like that.
The one thing though that we really should make everybody know is, like, if you're going to make your own tent, like Camp Christina did, is that in Canada it has to have fire retardant in it by law.
Right.
For a reason. I mean, if you use drop cloth, painter cloth, whatever, and it ignited, or worst ever is the people that are doing nylon tents and then putting a stove through it.
Yeah.
And you watch nylon burn. It doesn't burn. It melts onto your skin.
Yeah, it's worse.
So, and I get those tents, whatever, and I get that you can't afford a hot tent, whatever, but yeah, it's really, really dangerous. So I remember when she made that she sprayed the fire retardant. I think that was her biggest cost, the fact to put fire retardant in it. But you can't use a tent, especially showing it on YouTube, saying, look at everybody, look what I made, and then have it not legal. So you got to watch.
That's a good point.
Yeah, good idea.
So my beer's done. I'm switching here. Oh,
good on you. What you got?
Basil Hayden's Dark Rye. I don't know if you guys have ever had this before.
No, I'm not a rye drinker, so I've never tried it.
So neither am I. Basil Hayden is more popular for their bourbon, which I've had, which is quite good. So this rye, it says it's a mix of Canadian and American ryes, but it's also blended with port wine. So that's where it has like a very dark.
Dark.
For sure.
And so it's really good. The last trip I was on, canoe trip in the fall, I took this. I drank probably about half of it, I guess, over 5 nights. And it does not taste like normal rye to me, like Crown Royal or CC. And it's very, very good. It's not cheap, but it's not horrible either. About $50 at the LCBO.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend it.
It sounds like the Gibson now has a dark rye, and it sounds like the same idea. So
yeah, probably. I haven't tried that. I guess I should get some if I like this, because I'm getting sadly low.
Getting low.
Yeah.
I obviously have no best practices for packing up a hot tent. By the way, you guys all have, do you guys have the Esker ones, or do you is there a specific brand that's better than others for the price or whatever?
I got a Snow Trekker. It's sort of considered the Cadillac of hot tents, but it's made in the United States. They're not cheap, and the shipping costs will scare you. I am very fortunate. A subscriber of mine was selling one on Kijiji. I happened to reply to the ad, and he sold it to me and gave me a really nice deal on it. It was extremely kind of him. Nice. So I got mine secondhand, along with the pulk sleds that you saw there. and the duffel bags, and I got the whole kit, including the stove. So I was really lucky. I could not afford all of the gear that I wanted to buy, and I don't have the wherewithal. I just do not have the patience to make my own tent. I know I would just bundle it if I tried to do that.
Yeah,
I probably would as well. Yeah.
And or I would break 3 sewing machines in the attempt. So I was really lucky that someone out there was no longer using it and wanted to sell their gear, and it was in good condition. And it was just at the price that I could afford. And I mean, it was really the price that I could afford. I couldn't afford it anymore. I went all out on this, but it was a complete kit. I didn't have to sort of buy one piece this year and another piece that year, or go into Hawk in order to afford it. I always try. I don't like that. I like to live within my means. So I was really, really lucky. Otherwise, you really do have to save up. And maybe we should talk about that. Like winter camping, if you're doing the hot tenting style, that does get to be expensive, because you're going to need the tent. You're going to need a stove of some sort. Now, people make their own stoves, they make their own tents, so you can DIY all of those things. But if you're not crafty that way, it's going to cost you. Then you need a sled, a pulk, and that's not terribly expensive. But if you're going to get a freight toboggan, which is what most people do, because the gear is cumbersome, it's big. That freight toboggans are not cheap, but you can make those too. And there are DIY kits that you can buy, or you can just make them all from scratch, or order the materials that you need and make it at home. So there's a way to DIY all of this and stay within your budget, or you can just sort of pay through the nose, or over the years. But another style of camping that is really good that I recommend to people all the time, and people are not keen to take it up, is snow shelters. Snow shelters are really, really cheap, and it's really, really fun, and it's really, really comfortable. So there's a couple of ways to go. I build igloos using something called the Icebox Igloo tool. It's a contraption that helps you make a kind of continuous snow block in a spiral into an igloo shape, and it makes an igloo that is tall enough to stand up in and extremely comfortable, and lets the light through. It's really, really roomy. It's not dark and dingy like a snow cave or a snow trench, and it doesn't sag. You can stand on it in the morning. It's not like most quinzees. A lot of quinzees, they tend to sag. You wake up and the ceiling is closer.
My problem with quinzee is that I'm claustrophobic.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the quinzee. It's hard to excavate it enough. To build a pile of snow big enough that when you excavate it, it's roomy enough for a couple of people is actually quite a bit of work. And it's a little bit claustrophobic. Yeah, and honestly, if you don't know how to do it, you better have a friend on hand in case there's a collapse. Now, collapses are really rare. And depending on snow conditions, it's not even a big deal. The snow collapses on you, you just climb up, you just stand up. But if it's wet, heavy snow and you get that collapse that happens on you because you're not excavating it correctly, that could knock the wind out of you, and then you can't draw in breath, and you're just going to suffocate into there. So I am a little bit claustrophobic that way. I am not comfortable excavating a quinzee. So I usually will make the pile, I'll tunnel in, and then you tunnel in sort of at ground level or below ground level, and then you tunnel up. And the idea is you don't just tunnel in and excavate. You tunnel and you always excavate above your head. You're trying to lighten the snow load above you, and then you sort of go down. And that's the way to do it, so that if there's a collapse, there's only a little bit of snow falling on you, right? Like 6 inches of snow falls on you, as opposed to 4 feet of snow falling on you. But quinzees are easy to make. Kids naturally want to make them. I started winter camping. I mean, I don't know. I was like a preteen. I was like 10 or something. And we just started by carving tunnels in the snow in the yard. And that was so much fun, spending the day in our little snow forts, that we eventually decided we were going to sleep in there. And we would just double up our sleeping bags. You don't need $1,000 sleeping bag. You can double up some sleeping bags and insulate yourself from below. And so in childhood, I learned those principles of, insulating yourself from below. And sometimes I would forget. And, in fact, I forgot to do that once years ago, actually. When I knew a lot better, I screwed up on that. I actually made a video of a really embarrassing mistake where I just didn't make enough ground insulation and I was freezing in the night. But that's how we learned how to do it. And then eventually we would just say, well, let's do it in the woods. So we would do it in the woods behind our house, not in the backyard. And then we would just go further and further afield. We'd haul everything in with a sled and little plastic shovels and stuff like that. And so as children and as teens, we were winter camping absolutely on the cheap. No stove, no tent, No heavy pulk, just a kid's sled and a piece of cord to tug it along behind you with your snowshoes. No axe even. We didn't even need an axe, because when you are cold camping that way, if you start building big outdoor fires to warm yourself all the time, as opposed to relying on your body generating the heat from activity and food, if you're not sort of getting your own furnace going, you're relying on fire, what ends up happening is the outside of your clothes gets wet. And your body turns off the furnace because you're already warmed externally. And then you start walking around away from the fire and you're immediately cold. You walk away from the fire for 5 minutes and you're cold. And the outside of your clothes is warm and it comes into contact and it melts on you. And now you get wet. So I learned this it's a lesson I sort of dimly understood from childhood and in my teens and early adolescence, but was driven home to me much later in life when I started building igloos on the advice of a fellow named Igloo Ed in Colorado. He's an older gentleman. He hikes and leads guided expeditions up into the Colorado mountains on skis and snowshoes, and he builds igloos up there and sets people up overnight, and then he escorts them down again a couple of days later. And he never builds a fire because there's no firewood up there. It's above the tree line, right? And he says, if you cold camp and you're dressed right and you have a warm shelter like to return to, you're going to be fine. You don't need to make a fire. And a warming fire in winter has to be a big fire, not a little fire. So now you got to bring the big axe and all of that. And we never had any of that as kids. So you can
something that people don't tend to remember that. Like, if you don't have to take a step back from the fire, it's not going to warm you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is people will sometimes go out, they'll be cold tenting, they'll make a big fire and then that's fine. But then your body furnace shuts off, right? It's kind of, a lot of people don't appreciate this. Kevin touched on this earlier. Actually, he made a really excellent point when he said, people that are cold, they leave the house, they go to the car, it's freezing on the way to the car, they get in the car, they turn on the heat in the car, they wait for the car to warm up, or they start driving and then the car warms up, and then, okay, now they're comfortable. Then they get out of the car, they cross the parking lot, and they're freezing as they cross the parking lot to go into the office or to go into the mall or whatever. So they're going from a heated environment to a freezing environment, and at no point there, when they're in the cold, are they ever giving their body an opportunity to acclimate. Yeah. And acclimation is kind of weird. It doesn't take a whole day or 2 days. I mean, by day 2, it's fantastic, but you'll acclimate in a few hours. A lot of people know this just from going snowshoeing. But if you go out on a hot day, you walk out of an air-conditioned building on a hot day and you walk out in the sun, you'll feel that wall of heat, it's really hot. You don't start sweating immediately. It takes several minutes of physical discomfort before your body says, we need to turn on the air conditioner here. And you start perspiring, right? And your body starts to deal with it that way. It takes time. Your body has to feel the physical discomfort. And that's the same thing with winter. Your body will not turn on the furnace and start expending calories in order to warm you all at all of your surfaces until your body is uncomfortably cold for a while. And so what a lot of people do is they'll drive to where they're going to go snowshoeing or camping in their clothes. They're wearing their jacket. They've got their boots on and stuff like that. And they're already overdressed in the car. Then they get outside. Well, they've been sweating and they didn't realize it. Their feet are already sweaty from the hour drive, right? So when I go someplace, there's a couple of things I do. One is I don't wear my boots. I don't wear my moccasins. I'll wear slippers. I'll wear running shoes, whatever. I'll wear those and I'll dress normally. I'll shed off all those extra layers, right? And then I'll get out of the car and I'll put on my layers. And now my layers are useful to me. And I'm not already starting wet. I don't have a wet back. I don't have wet underwear. I don't have wet socks. I don't have wet boots. I'm dry when I get dressed. And then I let myself feel the cold. I don't put on every layer unless it's really bitter. Because I know the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some shoveling to make a place for my car, or I'm going to be hauling sled, which is work. And I know right away my body's going to have to generate heat. And I let my body feel the cold. So my wife and I have an expression, call it riding the cool edge. When you're out there, you should never feel warm. You should be comfortable, but it should feel a little, you should feel like, oh, it feels like I'm outside in some cool air, right? It should never feel hot. If you feel hot, you're sweating in your armpits, you're sweating in your crotch, and you're sweating in your boots, and you don't know it. And you're sweating down your back, especially if you carry a backpack. and you just don't realize it because you're comfortable, you're warm, but you shouldn't be warm. You're outside. Let your body feel the cold. Every minute that your body feels the cold and continues to feel the cold, your body goes, well, we need to prevent you from freezing. And you will be just fine. You will be comfortable. You won't get all numb or anything like that, and you won't get all sweaty. But as soon as you go, oh, I'm feeling warm, you need to have been taking layers off. So we have a principle, my wife and I, when we're out there, the principle is this. Ask yourself, doing what I'm doing right now, if I keep doing that, am I going to get warmer or am I going to get colder or am I going to stay the same, right? And if I'm going to get warmer, I shed layers now. I don't wait till I'm warmer. I shed layers now. I'm about to climb a hill. I don't wait until I'm halfway up the hill to take off my coat. I take my coat off now, so I never get into a sweat, right? And then as soon as I stop for a snack, sorry, just one last point. As soon as I stop for a snack, ask yourself, now that I've stopped moving, I've stopped snowshoeing, and I'm just standing around, we're talking or something like that, if I just stand here, am I going to get colder? Yeah, of course I'm going to get colder. Not moving anymore. Throw a layer on, but get that hat back on, right? And so you acclimate within a few hours, right? But you will only acclimate if you're not wearing that big parka that insulates you from the cold so much that your body says, I don't need to turn on the heat. And now your hands are frozen, your face is frozen, your feet are frozen, your body isn't thin, your blood isn't thin enough, nothing's circulating as it should be. Let yourself feel the cold, just mildly uncomfortably long enough for your body to turn on the furnace, and you'll be much warmer after that.
So I agree 100% with almost everything you're saying, especially like when you're going up that hill, you get halfway up and now you're starting to sweat. You don't want to stop. Same thing when you're on a portage with a canoe and it's early spring or late fall and you're like, oh man, I'm freezing. And you get halfway through and you're kind of getting sweaty and it's like, oh man, there's only 500 meters. I'm just going to crush this out. And you get to the end, you're already too sweaty and you just don't want to stop. You're in the pain and you're just going to keep moving. So you're right. It's hard to say, okay, I'm cold already. Like, let's take one more off. But when you get into it, sometimes you're so focused on doing what you're doing that you don't realize that you're sweating more and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. So you really want to ride the cool edge and you have to be mindful. Mindfulness. That is, you have to be thinking about your body in a way that you don't have to do in fair weather camping, in warm weather camping. Think about your body because when things go wrong, winter camping, it's serious, right? In a matter of hours, you can be dead, right? And I don't want to scare anybody, but hypothermia is a real thing. Dehydration is a real thing. People don't realize that they're sweating out there, and because they're cold, they think that they're not getting dehydrated, and so they don't drink as much. So it's important to stay fed, stay hydrated, and sleep well, which is another reason why I like to let the stove go out at night, as I just want to sleep through the night and get up only to pee for 60 seconds, and then roll over and go right back to sleep without fussing with the stove.
In my experience,
about your body is very important when winter camping.
Something you said there. In my experience, if you wait until you feel thirsty to drink, you're already working on it against yourself.
Yeah, it's really too late. Now you're playing catch up. And it's the same thing with, and it's exactly the same principle with feeling too warm. Once you feel warm, you've been sweating for a while. Well, now that's got to dry, right? And so the idea is never let yourself get sweaty. Don't get sweaty. And the best way to not get sweaty is never get warm. Now it's going to happen, right? Like, you're going to be chopping wood, and you want to get down to the business of processing some wood or something like that, and you're wearing some layers because you've just been standing around, and so you're wearing plenty of layers. You start chopping the wood. What you should do is say, I'm going to chop wood. In 60 seconds, I'm going to be warm. I'm not going to need this coat in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just not going to need it. So just tell yourself, I'm smart enough to know that in 60 seconds, I'm not going to need it. So I'm going to take it off now, because once I'm sawing through those logs, I'm not going to want to stop, put down the axe and take off the thing and then pick up the axe and, because you got to very often to undo buttons and stuff like that and button up, you've got to take off mitts and stuff. It's a hassle. You got to take off your work gloves, and you don't want to do that. Right. But if you're mindful, if you just think about what is the condition of my body now, what is the activity that I'm doing now? Is it going to make me hotter or colder or no change at all? That will dictate whether you take off layers or add layers, and it'll keep you dry. And sort of, for me, staying warm is all about moisture control. And that's just true in summer as in winter, but it's even more true in winter. You have to stay dry. I'm a skinny guy. Once I start to get cold, I have a real problem getting warm again. It takes me quite a while. So I got to make sure I don't get sweaty.
That's legit. Yeah.
Makes
a lot of sense.
The one question back a bit was about the Utuk or the Esker or the snow trucker tent. I think I'm getting a lot of comments on my private message about that. So I can answer that pretty good actually for the panel. Is that Martin was right. The snow trucker is the Cadillac. Like I own 4 of them. And I don't have any money, so for me to for them, they're good tents. Okay. So the great thing about them is they're A-frame. They actually come with a frame. You put the canvas over the frame. They're lightweight compared to the old ones. When you look at Utuk tent or even the Esker tent, which is the aftermath, the Utuk tent, which you would have in Quebec, actually, they're made in Quebec. And so it's pole, and then you stick it out, so it's lighter weight because you have no A-frame pole system, right?
Right. Okay.
So therefore, you can cut one in the bush, or you can bring one with you, or you stake it out with stakes, or you cut stakes in the bush. So therefore, it's a lot more lightweight. And then what happened was Utuk, and this is just rumor. I'm not in the business of tents, whatever. I just have them. But what I heard was Utuk just couldn't keep up with the demand the last couple of years because hot tenting just went like this, right?
Yeah.
So then Esker got the design, probably gave some money to Utuk, and then created their design, and then made them in Canada. Probably, I think it's in Toronto somewhere, and they made the tents. So it's the same idea. It's a single pole, no A-frame structure.
Yeah.
But a lot cheaper. So if you're a Canadian and you wanted to get a snow trucker, which is, to me, a really good, solid tent, you're looking at a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem with everybody out there. Like you're thinking about, I want to go hot tenting. I want to do what all these guys are talking about. This is fantastic. Well, you're looking at, if you go for a weekend and buy a tent, you're looking at $1,400 before you can go out there.
Before you even have a stove, by the way.
Yeah, and then you got to get the stove. You got to get the stove shipped to you and everything else. So it's a lot of money. I would beg, steal, and borrow. And actually, I just found out that Algonquin Outfitters is now renting hot tents. So because of the demand, so that's a good thing. So yeah, the Esker or the Utuk tent would be cheaper if you're in Canada. In the United States, no, because the snow trucker or whatever. But the thing is like it's all. My buddy Andy, he ended up at Christmas for a Christmas present. I gave him my old snow trucker because he kept borrowing it all the time. He kept on borrowing this tent, and I said, like, just have it, okay? And I mean, it was really old tent.
Remind me to borrow your tents a lot.
Yeah, so it's an expensive thing. So, but the difference of the design is what I really wanted to get at. Is that the snow trucker is an A-frame tent structure where you bring the poles with you, and put the canvas over it, and the Utuk or the Esker is one pole whether you cut it in the bush or not, and therefore there's no pull system, and you have to peg it out. So that's the big.
That's a big difference.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
My only addition to that is that, in my opinion, the best hot tent is your friend's hot tent.
That's really true.
They bring it, they buy it. You can maybe carry part of it. They have to clean it up, whatever. It's worked for me so far, but I'm going to get one probably next year or whatever. But so far, that's been the best one for me.
Well, I have some friends who divvied it up. One said, I'll buy the tent. And the other said, okay, I'll buy the stove and some other gear that they wanted. And then they go together when they go tripping. And so that's what they did. And then over the years, gradually, they each one bought the gear that they were missing, right? But the point is, for years, they were able to go out, even though neither one of them had all of the gear, right? But they could lend the gear to the other person, or they would go out together usually, and then they had everything they need. So they distributed the cost because they had a regular tripping partner. So if you have someone like that that's another way to do it, is just divide the cost between yourselves and then slowly accumulate the gear. I was lucky; I got it all in one fell swoop. but I was lusting and wanting a hot tent setup for years because I had always been, I'd been a cold camper, and then I didn't like cold tenting that much, but I loved igloo camping and still do. But I really wanted to go hot tenting because my wife has a condition called Raynaud's syndrome, which is a circulation problem.
Yeah.
So her fingers and toes get cold and stay cold, and they turn white, and it's really uncomfortable. She can't even do up her buttons and stuff like that when it happens. So I needed to have an environment, a shelter, where absolutely she could warm up and we could dry out all our gear very, very thoroughly every single day. So that's why I want to invest in that setup. But I mean, it's costly. Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, Canadian Outdoor Equipment also sells and rents the Esker tents and the stoves.
Yeah,
they sell them.
Yeah, I thought what was really cool is that when
So if you're in Toronto.
Yeah, and I hope this is true, but Algonquin Outfitters is just starting to do this. What I think is really good is that yeah, I think it's great. The Canadian Outdoor Equipment does rent them, but they're in Mississauga, Toronto. So if you're not there, but if you're going to Algonquin,
right,
you can actually get it from them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge plus. It's really expensive, like sleeping bags, man. Like that's insane. A winter sleeping bag, $600 minimum, right? So if you're only going to go for the weekend, and you also don't want to beg, steal, and borrow a sleeping bag because everybody's up in it, right? So it's like, I in the old days, I used to before I bought one, I used to rent one from the outfitter, and then even though it's washed and everything else, whatever, but I would put a liner in there. Actually the SOL bivy, it's bivy liner, so I put that in there. And then Andy, my buddy, he still can't afford a sleeping bag for the winter, so he brings 2 fall bags, but we hot tent, and then he keeps the tent going all night because he pees all the time. So
that would be my job.
The best way to, like, when I bought my sleeping bag, I originally bought the Mountain Equipment Co-op -31, so I got a couple of Christmases worth of gift cards, saved some money, and it was like $700. Okay, so I used it one time, and I found it really tight in my shoulders. So, like, I'm not a huge dude, but I'm not, like, small either. I'm about 6 foot, like, maybe 200 pounds. But, like, I found in my shoulders, it was just, like, anytime I'd roll, it was really tight on me. So I ended up taking that back, and I found that Marmot one, which is normally, like, $1,000 sleeping bag. And it was on sale for it ended up costing me $50 more, maybe, to exchange it. But I spent so many bad nights where I was freezing. And if you had told me at that minute I could give you my debit card, credit card, cash, for $750 to be warm right now, I would have done it in a second. So you spend enough cold nights, you're like, okay, I got to figure this out. It's expensive, but it's probably going to last me 20 years or more if I'm careful with it.
Yeah.
And
I do the same thing, Mike, with in fact the exact same story. And I got a Nemo and also an X-Pad one. 2 of them I tried, and the Nemo was more wide fitting. It's American, so I had to get it shipped over, whatever. But it wasn't a mummy bag. So that's what you're saying. You were confined in it, right? So makes it.
I'm a side sleeper and I roll back and forth.
Me too.
So the whole bag was rolling with me, and the Mountain Equipment Co-op bag versus the Marmot, the width of it was like literally 3 inches wider, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot. And so now I'm able to roll back, and it was a few bucks more, but it's $850 down versus $700. It's lighter. It's 10 degrees warmer.
Yeah.
And I love Mountain Equipment Co-op for, like, I have tons of stuff, and I have stuff dating back 25 years, and I'm 36, and I literally have stuff from the mid-90s, fleece jackets, long underwear, and I still wear it, and it will not die. So,
do you have those rad pants?
Yeah, I have some rad pants from the 90s. I bought some new ones and some old ones. I have a fleece pullover, like green and purple, from the mid-90s. I have this really thick 300 weight fleece from the mid-90s. I have some Gore-Tex snow pants, like long underwear from about 2000. And you know what? It was cheap. It's 20 years old and made in Canada. And we can't do that anymore, unfortunately, I guess. But that old stuff, it just will not die. I have these long underwear. It's probably 20 years old. I wear it 100 times a year. And there it is. It won't die, and I still got it.
Everyone say hi to Dennis.
Oh, we're all over the place now.
Yeah, I just saw you like an hour ago.
Yeah,
Hey,
man.
Dennis.
I just missed you an hour ago.
I just
For wings and stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, I had them already. That's the beauty of having the wife orders them and they're ready. We had pizza quick, wings, and back out again.
Really?
Yeah, we don't make a career out of it.
I had
You
the
know,
pleasure of having lunch and a beer with Dennis just the other day.
Yes, we
Nice.
did. That was awesome.
He was in my neck of the woods, and we got together. It was really nice.
Man, I'm feeling all separated from all of you guys now. I'm all like lonely.
At
How you doing,
Well,
John?
Practically Ontario.
some point, I'll
these
make my
days.
way out to Quebec. We'll look out.
How you doing, Mike?
Good. How's it going? Where are you from, Dennis? Are you from near me? I'm in Burlington.
I'm down Welland area.
Welland. My wife's from Welland, so I go there all the time.
Cool.
I know it quite well.
Yeah. That's home.
Yeah,
Oh.
our parents live right at the end of the 406 there.
Okay. Well, I'm actually in Font Hill, so
Okay, yeah, you're a little bit west.
I just thought of something that a piece of gear that we haven't really talked much about that's actually really important, and that's footwear. If you're winter camping, I don't recommend any of the conventional winter boots that most people sell. You'll go to an Outfitters, you'll go to a camping store or something like that, or any outdoor store, or MEC or something like that, and they have all these wonderful boots that are waterproof and Gore-Tex, and they're really nicely insulated, and they all suck. Your feet will be wet in hours from that. You'll be warm, right? Because you've effectively got a vapor barrier around your foot. You'll be warm. But the next morning,
Forget it. Yeah.
you're going to have a wet boot, and when you put your dry sock in there and your dry foot in there, you got to thaw out the inside of that boot. And when you stop moving, when you're just standing around and cooking in the evening or something like that, your feet are going to get cold. So if you're not going to get something like moose and deer hide moccasins with wool felt liners, what you got to do is go and get yourself some, those old skidoo boots, those old snow boots. They're called pack boots. They've got the rubber part that is lower, and then the upper part is some kind of nylon or canvas, and then they have felted liners.
Yeah.
Get those with one spare set of liners. That's what you need. Or you can even get rubber boots, like the billy boots with the liners. Even those are better. Just make sure you have two sets of liners so that when you're camping, especially it's not so critical if you're hot tenting, because there's a way of drying out your stuff. And but if you have no way of drying out your boots, you can't dry out the inside of your boots. You can't put them over the stove. You can't hang them over a fire. There's no way to dry out your boots. You have to be able to take that insulation layer out. And those felted liners is the only key. And it doesn't matter if they're synthetic liners or wool. Wool is better. But if you're getting a mix of synthetic and wool fibers or all synthetic, it's all fine. The point is you can dry your socks and you can dry your liners, and you have dry socks and a dry liner to put into that boot later that day when your feet are soaked, or the next morning or whatever. And then you can dry a liner over a fire or over a stove, and you can dry your socks that way. Right, but you can't dry a boot, right? So don't get anything. It doesn't matter how expensive it is. It doesn't matter how much they lie to you and say, oh, it's Gore-Tex, it breathes. Gore-Tex doesn't breathe for a dam in winter. And just avoid that. That's just all a waste of money. That's all great for snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. Those boots are great for day trips, right? Yeah. You never notice that they make your feet freeze because you always go home or get back into a dry car and a warm car, and you're fine. But when you're winter camping, there's no warm place to retreat to. And your boots are on the snow, and they will get cold. So get yourself some really good pack boots, those old skidoo boots with the felt liners, and get it. Do what you have to do. Buy Big Borrow or Steel, or write to the company or whatever, and get a spare set of liners if they don't have them at the store. Canadian Tire will usually be able to get, if you go to there and you get the Kamek boots or something like that, they're not expensive. They can procure you another set of liners. You say, I'm buying these boots, but I want another set of liners, and they'll ship them in for you if they don't have them in stock in your size. That's the way to go. I mean, I would never wear ordinary winter boots winter camping. Guaranteed you'll have cold feet. And if you have cold feet, you'll be cold all day. You'll be miserable.
Yeah, I use the Sorel, they're like Glacier XT or something.
Yeah.
Same thing. I have a spare set of liners. I can't remember where I got them. I bought them at Mark's Warehouse. They're probably $200. They have the extra insole. A lot of the Sorel boots now, they have a really, really thin toe box. So if you try and put a thick wool sock in there, you just get jammed. The Glacier ones are pretty good. I think they're $190.
They got a high toe box, a very high toe box.
Yeah, they're heavy. They're big.
But there's a problem. Sorel no longer sells the liners separately.
I bought some.
Did you wait recently?
Yeah, a year ago. And
okay. I stand corrected.
I don't think I got them through Sorel. I had to get. It was a real process to do it.
Yeah.
I either had to get them through Mark's Warehouse and it was a pain in the butt, or I had to do Sorel and had to like make phone calls.
Yeah.
But I do have a second set, and yeah, I quite like them. And for $200, it's certainly cheaper than some of the other ones, and they have advantages versus the hide mucklucks. But I've been very happy. I have some Baffin ones too that I use.
Yeah.
They have synthetic liners, but I would never buy boots or gloves that don't have the removable liners of some kind. Even if it's just leather gloves with like rag wool inserts.
Yeah, Mike and I have talked about that.
It's so much easier to just dry everything out if we can get those liners out.
Yeah.
You'll never get those boots dry. The other ones, the ones that with no removable liners, it doesn't matter how long you got. A hot tent, yeah, sure, I guess eventually, but
yeah. But Kevin, I remember you did a video showing you. I mean, this is a video you did years ago of you were going cold tenting. And you had just like rubber boots, for floods, right? And you had felt liners in them, right? And as kids, that's what we had. We either had snow boots or we had rubber boots that had the felt liners, and those work as long as you can swap out the liner,
Oh, the liners, big time.
Yeah.
I had those for
a few days.
The one thing that also that's really, really cool if you can find are Neo boots. They're pullover boots you put over your hiking boots. And
I've seen those.
Waterproof, and you always get them on sale because they don't sell well at all. I mean, I got them for $20 at an Army surplus store, and they were actually like $200 boots, whatever. But nobody buys them. It was my male person that was wearing them one day, and basically they wore them over their hiking boots because that's all they had. I mean, what you guys are talking about, absolutely agree. But if you have hiking boots and you want to keep them dry on a winter camp trip, Neo boots, pull them over, and they're waterproof. So they're you look like Herman Monster walking around. They're not heavy. They're not heavy at all. They're light.
They're quite light. Yeah, they're very light.
You look like Herman Monster, so you might as well become Herman Monster.
I think the ideal combo would be one of those like traditional leather mucklucks with one of those over boots, because they really are not light. If you get some slush conditions, you throw them on. Otherwise, you're good.
Yeah.
But again, like if you buy everything new, that's like $500 for boots. But like I said, you look for sales and whatever. And if I got cold feet, I'm cold. It sucks.
What do you guys think about the Jim Baird way of doing it there? His Baffin Island adventure that he's on, that he's got showing right now on YouTube. He actually uses he puts his feet in the sandwich bags or like plastic bags and inside the boot. And the reason why he does that is he says he'll sweat inside the bag, but his boot liners don't get wet. So at nighttime, takes everything off, the socks, everything, hangs the socks to dry, and his boot liners stay dry that way.
It works. Stinky feet, though, like the worst stinky feet in the world.
Yeah.
That does work.
You get those socks would be real quick to dry.
I can't see Jim Baird having sticky feet.
Of course.
Just throw the socks away by the end of the trip. Last night of the trip, you throw them in the fire.
Yeah.
Jeanette Barry had an interesting comment. She mentioned that Lure of the North sells the felted wool liners. So if you have boots and you can't get felted wool liners any other way, go to the lureofthenorth.com or .org or I don't know. It's just look up Lure of the North, and so these are the deer and moose hide moccasins that I made from a DIY kit, and there's a felted wool liner that comes with the kit, but they sell the liners separately. So if you just need liners, you can order the liners from them and they'll mail them to you. And this is a really thick wool liner. It's not 100% wool, but it's like 80% or something like that. It's really, really thick. Really comfortable.
I was wondering how those were so warm.
Yeah, that's part of why they're so warm. There's also a felted wool insole in the bottom that put in. So there's a felted wool liner. There's a felted wool insole. I wear a huge wool sock on top of a smaller wool sock.
So do you have to size up then? Because if I'm a size 8.5 or whatever.
Yeah, there's a sizing chart on their site if you can make the moccasins and what liner to wear. And another thing that Lure of the North, I feel like I'm shilling for them. They're not paying me to do this. I don't accept any sponsors or anything like that.
This is not.
I'm happy to endorse these because I use them. But they also sell a rubber overboot. Here we go. That's what this looks like, and it's made of natural rubber, which means it's not like PVC or other plastics. It will not freeze or crack in the winter. So if you have to walk across a lake that's all slushy or something like that, well, obviously this is going to get soaked. So what you do is you just pull out the felt liner,
throw it into the rubber boot.
Yeah, that's right, and just put the
See, now you're on camera. It's not going to work properly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so just take the boot, put that in your pulk, take your felt liner, and put it inside the rubber overboot, and now you've got a rubber boot with a felt liner, and you're all set to go. And they sell those at Lure of the North as well. So, those are not prohibitively expensive. Neither the full. I think the wool liners are $30 or something like that, and the boots are $50. The overboots, I mean.
Are they going to be at the Canoe Symposium in April? Do you know, or just the winter?
I'll
have to check.
Yeah. Well, they were at the winter symposium last year. I don't know if they're going to be there next year. I have no idea. I mean, they really are a winter tripping outfit. I don't know what kind of expeditions they offer in the summer. Pardon my ignorance here. I just don't know.
They do.
But actually, Lure of the North is an excellent organization. Kevin, you've experienced them. If you don't know anything about winter camping and you want to experience it, you can go on expedition trips. They have shorter trips, but they have 7 to 21 day expedition trips. And they give you the list of everything that you need to bring or buy. They supply tons of stuff and all of the training that you will need. You will learn over the course of 7 to 21 days, and some shorter trips as well. I believe they have all kinds of workshops, and it's a real trip. You are really going out into the wilderness on Crown land with them. It's a guided expedition, and by all accounts, it's just a ton of fun. Kevin, you went on one. How long was your trip?
I don't remember. It was a good trip. Like I said, they're the real deal. Really nice people. They came from outdoor ed from the university in Sudbury, and I remember back in the day, I remember we went out with them, and they had this dream of actually taking people out in the wilderness in the wintertime, and I was like, wow, that's different. Okay, good luck with that. And they've done that. They do offer summer programs, though. I do know that. So yeah, they actually go. It's not their main forte, I guess, their main client base, but they do that. So yeah.
Nice. I'll take a look. I'll definitely take a look. And at one point, maybe next year, at some point, I'm going to build those mucklucks myself. I really like those, Martin.
Oh, you'll love it. And these are all hand sewn. There's no sewing machine.
Yeah.
You make them out of artificial sinew and the hide that they provide. They just send you a big sheet of hide and the patterns, and you choose. You cut out the pattern in paper for your size. They have them for every size, and then you just cut out the hide, and then you just follow the instructions. And they have a written booklet that tells you how to make the lower, another booklet on how to make the upper, and they have instructional videos, so you can literally watch them making them. It's beautifully explained. I mean, I'm not an arts and crafts kind of guy, and if I can make these, anybody can make them. They even have videos, as Kevin said, on how to attach a soft rubber bottom, which is a mix of a kind of adhesive, kind of like a shoe goo, and ground rubber tires is what this is made of. Recycled rubber tires, basically. And just a thin layer. It's to protect the bottom, to provide some grippiness, and that's it. It just prolongs the life of the underside of the moccasin.
Right.
I do a question there, because I used vapor barriers last year just to experiment on a fall trip, actually, and it's the same idea. Vapor barriers is just an expensive thing of plastic bags, and I would say, I think you are more to blisters with that.
Thank you for answering that, because I was just trying to work that into the conversation. Thank you. Yeah. What kind of vapor barriers are these? Where'd you get them?
Actually, I bought them online at Canadian Outdoor Equipment. The funny thing is, like, Tim, the owner of that store, him and I are trip partners. We go out a lot. But the same thing is, like, I think next time he's got to cut my Visa card up. Like, I freaking shop there all the time.
That's a dangerous store.
Oh my God, it is. So he's really finicky on gear on trip, and he doesn't say too much to me because it's just him and I tripping. It's not a business thing we're doing, but he's really finicky. So he'll be experimenting on gear, and I'll be like, "What's with that?" Oh well, Kevin, you can't film it. Like, I'm just experimenting. I might bring this out in a couple of years. It's like, oh, Tim, geez, come on. It was the vapor barrier socks, and he was trying those out. And then I went on a fall hiking trip with my students, actually, for quite a few days, and I tried them, and they were good. It's the same thing as a plastic bag idea. He loved them. I didn't because of the blistering. But they do what they say. I mean, yeah. And Jim's right. Like, you're going to sweat in that bag and not in your liner. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember him really. In fact, he has yet to sell that hat. In fact, it was the Lure of the North trip. My God, that had to be like almost, oh my God, a dozen years ago now. He wore this hat on the trip with him, with them, experimenting with it, and he's still experimenting with it. It's a beaver hat, so when he's sleeping at night, when you're in the sleeping bag, frost is coming out of your sleeping bag, right? So you don't want to put the sleeping bag over your head because it'll get wet. And we'll put a vapor barrier, or we'll put whatever on. So he's got this beaver hat that he flips down, so the frost goes into beaver. And whether you believe in fur or not, it doesn't matter. But basically, he had that. And with fur, I found in the far north, traveling with the First Nations, is that you shake the fur and the crystals fall off, and then it's dry, right?
Yeah.
So he did that, and he's still testing it out, and that's got to be like 15 years. He's haven't sold the hat yet.
Yeah, at this point, you can probably sell it.
I think he just wants the hat for himself.
Okay, we're at 11 p.m. So technically, this show is over.
Thank God, because as soon as Dennis came on, I was like, "Are we done?"
Well, he didn't even say anything. Like, "Hi, Dennis."
I've been enjoying the show. You guys are doing a good job. I piped in a few times.
Yeah.
I didn't want to disrupt the chemistry too much, right?
But Dennis, man, you're part of the chemistry.
Thank you, dude.
I love you, baby.
Can I tell you one quick story?
Yeah.
Went winter camping just on this past weekend with my buddies from Kid Products. And on Friday night there, drove up to Burlington to Ingo's place. And I was going to spend the night, so I didn't have to leave at like 4 o'clock in the morning from here, right? So we're loading up the cars, and Ingo puts on his boots, and I look down, and I go, son of a bitch. I forgot my boots at home, seeing as we're on a boot topic. Not one pair, but 2 pairs. I forgot both my sets of boots at home. I walked by them like half a dozen times, and I was loading up the truck. Had to drive all the way back from Burlington back to Fond Hill to pick them up.
Oh, no. Really?
Like, son of a gun. So what do you do in that case? Do you just go to a sale and buy yourself a brand new pair of boots?
Yes.
I didn't. I drove home.
But you're slowing up the process at that point.
Yeah. No. We weren't holding anybody up. It was the night before we were ready to leave, right? So.
Yeah, it's only an hour and a half-ish round trip, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, Dennis, to make you feel better, I flew in with Speedo Man, his very first fly-in trip north of Algoma, the far north.
Yeah.
We did an 8-day trip. We landed. The plane took off, and he's all anxious because, Kevin, we never done this before. I went, yeah, this is fine. We're fine. We're all fine. I go to set the tent up. I brought the wrong poles for the tent. Yeah, so for 7 nights, I cut saplings for that friggin' pole. So
wow,
whoops, that's hilarious. So I just want to say good night to everyone who has been watching us. I think this has been a great episode. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm glad to have had all of you guys on. To those of you who are watching from home, I've left links to the panel in the show notes below. So feel free to check those out. Toss them a sub or a follow, depending on if you're on YouTube or Instagram. And I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks a lot and have a good night.
Cheers.
Hey, Jess.
Nice meeting you, Mike.
Later.
Yeah.